Good afternoon or good morning, depending on what time zone you're in. This is Jen Wilson, and I'm here with my friend Amy Vetter, and we're here for Leadership Lunch Chat, where we meet every Friday for about 20 minutes and talk about the latest in leadership and management and, I don't know, life in the profession and in our communities. And Amy and I were talking about, like what should we focus on today? And one thing that I would like to suggest that we talk a little bit about is something I think we touched on last week very briefly, and that is this idea of tone at the top and the messaging and the behavior and the mindset of leaders and how that affects their talent, how it affects the people, how it affects the mindset and the approach of the talent. We're seeing a lot of turnover in the profession. It's normal to have turnover a couple times a year. Usually, we call them the quitting months, May and November, December. But we saw maybe more quitting than normal, and we're seeing some quitting in January, which is not totally unheard of, but not normal, not regular. And firm leaders are like, why is it happening? What are we, what can we change? And they go right to, should we offer more money, or they go right to something mechanical that they could jump in on. And I always start by saying, what are you doing that's scaring them off? Let's start with that. So what do you think about this, Amy? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I would say there is a couple things beyond just pay. There is a divide between wanting to listen to what the staff is actually feeling to what the leadership is feeling. And they're very different things, and everybody comes at it from their own perspective of what's in it for me. They don't necessarily understand all of the firm inner workings, all the reasons decisions are made, all the different things that are going on that are very stressful as a leader that you may feel like everybody knows, but they don't. Like they're just worried about like the work that they do and trying to be happy in the work that they do and so forth. And when there is a lack of transparency or communication, someone will fill in the gap, whether it's right or wrong, whether it's true or not. And then that starts taking a life of its own, which starts elevating this fear and just overall frustration, what I see at least between the two sides.
Yeah. Well, and what you were pointing to is a saying that we have at Convergence, in the absence of information, people make up their own, and it's almost always negative. So the communication void is a big challenge. So I love where you just were, which is the idea of being open to feedback and trying to examine the gap, the difference between what we see happening and, what we think is happening and what our team members feel, and what we think we should change and what our team members feel we should change. And so regular check-ins, little huddles, asking, how's it going? What could we do as leaders to make it better? How could we make your busy season or your next 4 months better? How could we make your life working remotely in the pandemic better? What could I do? Just the kind of that listening tour we talked about a lot when we work together. Mm-hmm. I think that is one thing. I also think that, leaders need to recognize that if they make partnership and leadership look too hard, no one will aspire to it. And when they think that the job is just all ugly and all, problems.
And all hours.
Yes. Oh, yeah. All everything, right?
Yeah.
When they think that, and then they decide, I don't want that because it looks ugly, then they are faced with, what am I doing here? Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be partner to have your work be meaningful. So I'm not saying that people can't stay and have a wonderful career. But I think those that are thinking, I want to keep ascending, when they look up and they say that part of the mountain, the partner part looks like too treacherous to ascend, then they start thinking maybe I should pick a different mountain to climb. And I think that, so partners are not very transparent about the potential earnings of partnership and the benefits of partnership and how cool it is to be with clients. They don't bring people along so they can see that wonderful side of making a difference and building those friendships with clients. We don't take our people to association meetings in the old paradigm pre-pandemic, where we might go to a wonderful locale and have great, interesting CPE, but also awesome dinners and possible social activities, so they could see the benefits of that. We hide the good stuff and really complain about the bad. And I don't get that. I don't get how we think that then, we're like, geez, she didn't want to be a partner. I don't understand it. You didn't make it look attractive.
Yeah. And the other issue around that is there is a way that technology companies work when they're doing development that is very different than how change management happens in a firm, because there's this push-pull of younger staff members or people that are closer to the work wanting to make the change, but people that have been around having that tribal knowledge of, I don't want to change. This is going to be too much work. And so that because of that, what happens is that no one actually understands what is happening. So it creates this combustion chamber of fear, right, of what's happening. And, the way technology companies go through change or product management, that sort of thing, is through an agile sprint.
Yes.
And the problem when firms try to change is they're still trying to hold on to what they're doing. It takes too long. Everyone has too much angst, instead of like having the quick check-ins every day, having the check-ins of what do we need to be flexible on and keep moving on, so that people don't feel like, well, they said we were going to do this and then they never did it. There's just a different mode of management and moving a process through that can be possible for a firm if you're willing to adopt it. That could create at least a little more communication and promise of a future that's going to be different than today. Because the problem is that when you don't move forward, or there's too much infighting over something that's supposed to get done, it gives this hopelessness to the staff that it's not going to change. They're going to go through another busy season like this, and they just can't do it one more time.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's just too much changing for us to allow change resistance, overt change resistors, anchors that drop anchor and stop you from moving forward. We can't allow that anymore. We have to bring them along. So I'm not saying that, that it isn't our job, or we're not responsible as change managers and leaders to bring people along, but we really can't allow people to just, complain, triangulate out in the hallways, tell their people, everyone else that might do this, but we're not for my clients.
Right.
We just can't allow that anymore. There's too many changes for us to make because of the rise of next gen, because of the shift in demographics, because of the incredible technologies available to us that will provide competitive advantage to other firms if we don't adopt them. We have to be agile. We have to have a methodology for change. We have to empower change leaders, and we have to essentially penalize or remove meaningful change resistors. And the next generation, they want all this change, most of them. Maybe some of them are more in the laggard camp or something, but that's very rare. Most of them are dying for this change. So when they see, like you said, resistors being allowed to persist, or change being slowed, or change being tabled, it's so demoralizing for them. And there's nothing that could get them more excited than seeing change and being part of the change. Some firms are like, we don't know how to do it. We're all busy. We can't, get it done. I'm like, great, give it to a next gen group. They'll get it done.
Right.
They'll find the time, and they will not be, too busy, and they will figure it out, and they'll make it happen.
And you can find outsourcers to help you.
Oh,
So,
sure.
Because what happens a lot of times in these processes is that everyone gets scared of like, oh my God, I already have so much work. How am I going to add on more work? And everything doesn't have to happen tomorrow, but there has to be progress. And it doesn't all have to be by you.
Right.
It can be that for short-term projects to get things done and to move things along, you're bringing in outsourced specialists that specialize in these things so that it does get done, and you're not adding more workload on people, which then creates more stress.
Right.
I think there's just, there's this balance that's really hard as a leader is, your staff people are thinking like, my life's never going to change. This is miserable. And then when you try to put through change, people are getting scared because they can't take on more work. So there is that struggle as a leader that's really hard, but your job is to clear the path, not to feed into the complaining. And I think when that complaining keeps happening with outside conversations and not in a meeting, like it's like being a parent. It's like if someone comes into you and complains about something that just happened in the meeting, you say, nope, you bring it up in the meeting. Like, this is why we have these meetings. So everything is on the table. It's not a one-on-one thing. It's that we're laying it all out there for all of us to solve, that we're not working behind each other's backs and so forth. And every time someone goes outside of that, and every time a leader allows that to happen, then you squash innovation, you squash that future of, people seeing that change is actually going to happen instead of hearing that there's people complaining because they don't want to lose what they're used to.
Yeah, you erode trust too, right? That backroom politicking or backroom anchor dropping. We all decided something and we're all moving forward, and then an anchor's drop. And sometimes it's valid, and sometimes you can't bring it up because of your position. It's a positional problem. You can't raise it, and the culture doesn't support that kind of transparency or challenging.
Mm-hmm.
There would be meeting smackdown and more awkwardness. But then the leader might entertain the complaint or concern outside the meeting and say, we're going to have to bring this up next meeting, and you're going to need to, I'll bring it up and you follow me in. And this isn't going to be something we just handle outside, So I think it's okay to sometimes do that if the circumstances just don't allow for it to be brought up. But the ideal culture has us raise challenges, issues, concerns transparently with one another and deal with those objections together, so that, and selfish interest is at play. Hey, I don't like this because I'm going to be impacted in the following ways. We've got to get good at saying those things for sure. That'll take change off track if those objections exist, but they're not brought up on the table. One thought I had about this, where we are right now, is that sometimes, leaders think about this. All of this is change and change communication. Really, that's what you and I are on this morning. And sometimes we think it either I need to be quiet because I don't have anything super positive to say, or I'm going to be complainy, or I'm going to be sort of Armageddon is coming or something. I mean, those feel like the speeds that I run into, and there's this concept in mental health called realistic positivity. And realistic is, I'm not in denial, and things aren't perfect, and we don't have all the answers. And there are outside forces beyond our control at play here. Mm-hmm. Like legislation, for instance, or something, right? So that's the realistic part. The positivity is, but there are upsides. There are silver linings here. We have possibilities for addressing these. We are at work studying these issues, and I think we miss positivity. First of all, that doesn't come through very clearly. And then the realistic is almost like pessimistic. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not realistic. It's right. More like, let me tell you all the negatives. And it's
all the things that happened in the past.
Yes. And also like I don't know. Some people enjoy like telling you their latest dramatic problem. And I understand that. We have to be careful. That's not how we're leading the troops, because they can't, that just burns them out. It just wears them down and burns them out. They need realistic positivity. They need hope. They need silver linings. They need possibilities and opportunities in the future. They need to be called to the future and not afraid of today or tomorrow.
Yeah. And within that, consistency. So consistency builds trust. And if you're going to go off of the way that you said you were going to go, then explain it. Don't just let it happen without communication, so that people feel like they matter, that, you're not ignoring their feelings about something. And, and not all things are things you can talk about. Like there might be, things that just aren't appropriate, but it's things that are obvious that are happening in the business. So at the same time, you have to acknowledge what it is, and not act like it's not happening. And also explain, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And you're acknowledging the fact that there are things you can't discuss, because of, the business itself and what's right for the business. So there's ways to communicate everything. It doesn't always have to be that you agree. So, you get feedback, you do your listening tour, you come back and, maybe there's a number of people that are upset about one thing or another. It doesn't mean that when you respond back, you have to say, we're going to change that. It's responding back and saying, I hear you. Maybe you don't understand these 3 factors that went into that decision. And this is the reason why we cannot change it. But we can do this, this, and this to maybe make your life a little bit better. And so as long as people feel heard and they understand the outside circumstances, they don't feel so ignored. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody comes into a job with, stars in their eyes, ready to take on this job, ready to succeed. It's our human nature. We want to do well. So, when that gets squashed little by little every month and you're hearing complaining, you can't walk back and say, I'm so sick of their complaining. It's like, okay, they're complaining. Let me understand, because else I'm going to lose my staff and then I can't serve my clients. And then I got a whole other set of problems, right?
Yeah. Well, and silence doesn't mean there aren't concerns. So, because
Right.
I think a lot of us are mature enough that we know that complaining doesn't help us. So we'll stop complaining at some point and just clam up, put our head down. And
body language is,
yeah. Well, and also our level of engagement. So we have to watch for other things, that might signal issues. And it's, I'm missing meetings, or I don't turn my video camera on right now, or I'm not participating. I don't have really anything to say in the meetings. I'm not asking questions I used to. I haven't, sent any Teams chat messages to you lately, but I used to sometimes check in, just like looking for those other signals, and then just acknowledging though that, our people, they want to know you care. They want to know you'll hear them. They want more information all the time. Some of it, like you said, Amy, we can't give, but a lot of it we could give. And so it's like just trying to give a little more context, a little more background. They want to be heard. They want an outlet that will hear them without punishment or without being smacked down or ridiculed or whatever, teased about their thoughts. That's what our people want. And they want to know that that we're getting better. That's, everybody wants to be part of something that's getting better. And to have a get better culture, you have to identify things that aren't working and identify market opportunities and go after them. Not too many at a time, which we've talked about in prior sessions, prioritized carefully with our volume and with our seasonality. But everybody wants to be part of an organization that's going after addressing and issues and opportunities and getting better. And then they want to work for leaders that look like they're getting better.
Yeah.
You don't want to look for leaders that look like they're stalled or stopped, like they're stunted and they're hopeless. They're at wit's end. They're throwing their hands up. They don't want to work for leaders who are burnt out, tired, unhealthy. And you could be hearing me right now and saying, I'm all of these things. What do I do about it? Because I know that this has been a tough 2-3 years for many of us. And certainly the pandemic has been just an unbelievably wild ride for us. But and I don't want you to be fakey, but I want you to look in the mirror and say, who am I being?
Right.
And is it attracting people and magnetizing them to the firm and attracting them, pulling them forward to our future? Or is it scaring them off or repelling them or grossing them out or making them also be like us? Some people won't leave us. They'll just act just like us.
Right.
They'll complain. They won't listen. They'll be unhealthy because it's accepted, So I think maybe one big takeaway is just, what is the get better plan? Mm-hmm. For you, for your leadership team, for your firm, for your department, for your service line, for your industry, for your clients, for whatever. And how can you draw people into that?
Yeah. And I would just close by saying, as a leader, training and learning doesn't stop, and it isn't always CPE. Oh. And so in order to deal with a lot of these issues, it means kind of taking those big, hard looks at how you're leading, being vulnerable, being open to feedback, and looking at the type of training that each person needs. It's not a weakness. It's that we're constantly having to grow and learn and be open to that opportunity in order to make sure that we do maintain the culture that we want and retain our employees, because it's so expensive to bring in each new person.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you, Amy, for this great dialogue on this subject that I know is bugging both of us and a lot of our compadres in the profession. So hopefully you've got some good takeaways or ideas. And we welcome further ideas into the social media chat. Post them along the way. And if you have ideas for future sessions, let us know. We'll be here next week at 12 noon Eastern on Friday. See you then.